And we are now speaking with Terrence Martin, the president of Detroit Federation of Teachers. He's joining us today to talk about the reopening plan for Detroit Public Schools Community District. Now, last month, not terribly long ago, the school system outlined its plan for reopening. Haven't had a lot of dialogue within the community, but I think it's time for us to actually do that. Students have started school for summer. I believe that was July 13th. And so this is almost like an opportunity for us to see what the fall semester is going to look like. But again, instead of me talking about it and conjecturing, I'm going to talk to someone who has very much more on the ground knowledge about it. Again, President Terrence Martin. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Tate, for having me.
Absolutely. So, the school system outlined its reopening plan not terribly long ago. You've had an opportunity, you and your members have had an opportunity to review it. I'm sure there's some conversation going on back and forth, as there should be. But what's the overall tone and tenor, if you will, of the school teachers, instructors, and rest of the staff members for DPSCD?
Well, we've had an opportunity to review the plan. Obviously, there are some things in the plan that are of a concern to our members and should be a concern to the general public. I think first and foremost, what should be understood in this conversation is that when that plan was rolled out, it was rolled out without having input from teachers, from community, and from healthcare professionals on the onset. There were opportunities for those individuals from those entities to engage in a conversation afterwards, but it wasn't an opportunity on the front end, which is obviously a concern of ours and should be a concern of the general public and the community in terms of that. Obviously, this has been an extremely difficult time. With a global pandemic and trying to figure out how we actually get students back to school. So we've been engaged in conversations, obviously with our membership, with folks in the community, and I can tell you that there are a lot of concerns. People are really concerned about sending their students to school and contracting the virus. And actually bringing it to a household that is multi-generational. You may have parents, grandparents, and even some instances great-grandparents all in the same home. And as we know from research and from what our medical professionals have told us, is that our seasoned population of citizens are most at risk, as well as those who have pre-existing conditions are also at risk for this virus. We know what it's done to our community. Detroit was one of the cities that were hit hardest by this virus. It's no question that we have a large population of Black and brown folks, which this virus has hit extremely hard. And so that is really a major concern of our membership and of the citizens as a whole.
So we know at this point, the virus is not going to be gone by the time fall semester begins. So we know it's firmly here. Now it's a matter of identifying the risks, of course, and then also how to mitigate those risks. So you identify them and then you figure out how to get around it. What are some of those concerns that you all have? I mean, of course, the contracting the virus. That is the number one obvious risk and concern. What are some of those other areas of concern that you and your teachers have? I mean, I read something that indicated that the school system is looking to have no more than 20 students per classroom. Now, we know that there's many contractual agreements that have come and gone that said that the school system was supposed to have a certain amount of students, and they exceeded that. Are you all concerned that even though this is written on paper, that it may not actually come to fruition based on the need and the challenge for the school system?
Well, we believe that 20 is too many. Look, we're in a city, we can't figure out how to get 50 people inside of a bar or a restaurant, let alone 20 children inside of a congested classroom with masks and with physical plants, with buildings in which we don't have proper ventilation. many of our school buildings have windows that don't open and close. When you talk about going back to school in September, it's going to be 85 degrees. It could be 90 degrees. It's going to be very hot. Now you have students with masks and without proper ventilation in a very small classroom with 20 children. It's just a recipe for a disaster in terms of that virus kicking up and not having the proper ventilation. One of the other issues that we have and we see with this plan is that it does not call for our students to be tested for COVID, which I think is a major piece. If you're going to require staff and all those who work in a school to be tested, it just makes sense to also have students tested as well, because we all need to be safe and we all need to know what our status is. The plan does call for daily symptoms checks, but those daily symptoms checks aren't going to always give the full picture of the health of an individual that enters into a building. So having the testing is essential. Also having ongoing testing. So we can't just test one time and say, hey, you're fine, you can come to school. There needs to be an ongoing strategy around testing.
How often are teachers tested?
Well, right now it's just one time. You have to be tested one time and have a negative test in order to work in the fall.
Got it.
So the requirements just aren't there to really figure out long-term sustainable solutions to this issue. Coupled with that is what's happened over the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks. The cases in Michigan are going up, and it's at an alarming rate. And there are talks of the governor even rolling back a phase to some sort of shutdown to figure this out and to get control of it. And if that occurs, then there's absolutely no way that we can even have a conversation about returning children to school in person.
So, quite often you hear about Detroit getting not necessarily being the preeminent district or even the municipality when it comes to things that are provided, right? So some would say, well, this school district has a pristine plan. Maybe the city of Detroit or the school district, Detroit Public School Community District, should emulate this particular plan. Have you seen any plans out there, reopening plans that you think, yeah, if we did more of that, it may not be perfect, but we did more of this, it would touch on many of the issues and the concerns that my teachers have?
Well, the school district, the Detroit Public Schools Community District has a semblance of a plan, right? And the elements of that plan call for a combination of in-person and virtual learning, which it mimics a lot of other school districts around the state have taken similar measures. But the plan that I've seen that I believe works and my members believe will work is going completely virtual for at least the first semester, similar to what Los Angeles has done, similar to what Atlanta has done already. Now we recognize the fact that this may not work for every student, may not work for every household. So we're certainly willing to have a conversation around maybe carving out some of our special needs students that need that one-on-one and providing some safeguards for those students and staff to go back into work. We recognize the fact that distance learning isn't going to work for everyone. So let's talk about how we can carve out some of those groups that actually that are more in need of the one-on-one contact with teachers more so than others.
So I read that prior to the plan being released, the school system surveyed about 4,000 parents, they indicate here, and says that around 48% say that they would be interested in sending their students back to school in person over the summer. We're in that time period right now. It says 61% said that they would be prepared to send their kids back to school in September. Now, these numbers are a lot higher than I thought they would be, just in speaking to some of the parents that I've spoken to. And then they also indicate that 75% said that they would be comfortable with a mix of in-person and virtual instruction in the fall. Do those numbers sound comparable to what you've heard from parents? Let's talk with parents first. And I know we got.
Sure. I think you have to consider when the survey was actually taken. If it was prior to the plan being rolled out, then the state was on a trajectory of really lowering the case numbers. If you have those same persons, those same parents today, as you're now seeing a rise to the cases, then their responses can be vastly different. Look, we've said it in the beginning. I've said it in multiple mediums. We've got to be driven by science. This is not a teaching and learning issue. Teachers know how to teach. Students will be ready to learn. Parents will be ready to adapt to whatever environment is going to be available for them and for their families. But we've got to allow medical professionals to lead this conversation. What does the science say? What is the safest way to do this in terms of what the science and what medical professionals deem safe for the public? When you saw our governor speak about the coronavirus at the onset of this, she didn't do it by herself. She was there with a doctor, one of the leaders in her profession, there alongside of her to really give the facts and really guide where the state was going to go. I'm just saying that we need to do the same here in the city and with our school district.
So, again, voicing your concern for you and your teachers, how has the district responded to any of these concerns? And again, I know there's some going back and forth, but what have you heard thus far? Any movement?
Well, we're not at the point right now where we're satisfied with the district's response. We certainly look forward to continuous talks with the district, not just us, but also with community and with medical professionals to really shape how we give the community the assurance that we're making the proper steps to keep children and keep staff safe. So
we're about a week in now, actually absolutely a week since summer school began in the city of Detroit for DPSCD. How has things gone thus far? I mean, have you seen the school system stick with the plan? Have you seen some deviation from the plan? Have you seen some areas that didn't necessarily concern you before, but now have raised those concerns? And then I also asked, are there some things that you were concerned about before, but now you're pleased about?
Well, I think that so far, some of the concerns that I've gotten from staff members are around class size. And it's not necessarily the number of physical children that are showing up every day, but the number of children that are actually on a roster that have not shown up. And if in fact, then the number of students who are registered actually showed up, then we're talking about more than 20 students per classroom. But that has not been an issue that has been brought to me as of late. I think that what is happening is, the district is providing PPE for our staff. That hasn't been an issue. But one of the things that people have raised is that our students are becoming extremely restless in the classroom. And it is extremely hot in those classrooms. And now you have students with masks and you can't open a window to get proper ventilation. And now you have students in summer school that are extremely restless. So it's going to be an issue that we've seen with managing how this goes. We were certain that there were going to be parents who wanted to send their kids to summer school because they were afraid of the summer loss. And really, we're talking about spring and summer loss right now. And so they wanted to make sure that their kids were able to at least compete with other students, across the state, across the city, and not go that long without in-person school. We also know that school provides an opportunity for kids to be safe in a place and for parents to go back to work. And many of our parents have to go back to work. And we understand that. We certainly understand that. And we want to be there to provide the proper and necessary education that we can. We just want to make sure that it's done safely. And right now, we have not gotten the assurance that come fall that it's going to be safe. Right now, we're looking at 600 students that are showing up in schools every day. We have 50,000, over 50,000 students that are in our school district. And so now managing 50,000 is going to be a monumental task. And so the issues that we see now will certainly be exacerbated once 50,000 students begin to show up in the fall.
So how do you get those classrooms down? I read again, it said the summer school, 15 students per classroom. And now once you get to phase 4, which is the fall semester, we're talking again 20 students. Haven't been able to do that in the past. How have they explained to you that they're going to be able to do that with all the challenges that you just outlined, the hot classrooms or cold classrooms, depending on the climate? You're talking about still some outdated infrastructure in some of these schools, and you're landlocked. I mean, you don't have new buildings, you don't have new space, you're not having new additions that are built in. And then there's also a challenge with teachers, having enough teachers for these reduced classroom size. Again, I go back to, I mean, I've got my hands full as a council member. Here we are asking you guys, how do you see this ending if everybody doesn't talk and knock out these issues? I mean,
well, it won't. It won't, and it won't work well until there's buy-in from all the parties that are involved. It's no question that this is going to be a difficult task, and none of us asked for a pandemic, but here it is, and here we are. And our union has been more than willing to work collaboratively with the school district, with the community, to really figure this out. We just haven't been invited to the table. And so, you know, I certainly rely on my teachers who are the experts in their profession to really, you know, guide the conversation as well. And they've given many ideas of how they think that it could go. But where they always land is it safe enough at this point for students? Are we going to be safe? What happens if I contract the virus? What happens if I'm asymptomatic, I don't know I have it, and then I go home to my husband or go home to my wife who has pre-existing conditions that can potentially harm and endanger them. And we've seen the effects of COVID on folks who are most vulnerable. And so people are extremely frightened and fearful of contracting this virus. And again, it is the influx of the cases, it's the rise of the cases over the last week or week and a half that has really gained the concern or garnered the concern of our membership in the community at large. We thought we were on the right track. We were wearing our masks, we were social distancing, we were locked down. Now that people are able to move around a little bit more because of the restrictions being lifted, we're starting to see those cases rise. You couple that with opening a school, we can be right back where we were back in March.
So I know you indicated that the school district did not include you all in the plans, but I'm looking at the governor's or the state of Michigan's return to school advisory council, and they didn't have anybody from Detroit Public Schools community district on it either. No one from DFT. Now, Dave Hecker, who's the president of AFT, he was he's a part of it, but the largest school district in the state, not a part of it. And I saw Rochester and I saw other school districts. What does that tell you? I mean, I'm not trying to create animus, but you know, I'm trying to interpret that. How do you interpret that?
Well, the way that I interpret that is if you want it to work and if you want buy-in from the community, then you've got to include the people that are impacted the most. And if the people that are impacted the most are not at the table, then it's a recipe for a disaster. So
is there anything within the plans that you see that may be positive that you can build on? I mean, I don't think you're throwing away the whole plan.
No, we're not throwing away the entire plan. And I think that looking at it and offering parents a choice and offering somewhat of a hybrid system makes sense. But it only makes sense if people are going to be safe. And right now, according to the governor, we're at stage 4 of our reopening plan. The numbers continue to rise. There's talks of us going back to stage 3. And if that happens, I mean, we obviously cannot talk about returning to school in person for students.
So you all, and my last question, you all are huge on advocacy. you all advocate for children on a regular basis, and your teachers as well. How can advocates advocate for you? How can the public advocate for you and your teachers, and ultimately the students as well, in this mix of, you know, question marks that many people don't know all the minutia of this, but they know that we're trying to get students back to school, but the numbers are also rising as well. There's a lot of pressure on many different ends and different levels. How can people help you all achieve what you're trying to achieve at this point?
Well, our main goal is making sure that staff and students are safe. And if there's a return to in-person school, that is done safely and it makes sense. And our decision is driven by what medical professionals would indicate. But what I would also say is, you know, we fought long and hard in this city to get back an elected school board. And we were successful in doing that a little over 4 years ago. So we have elected body who's also making these decisions. So we need to hear from you. They need to hear from you. The elected school board needs to hear from you, the superintendent and his staff. They need to hear from the public and what their concerns about sending their students back to the classroom, where the teachers are, you know, the concerns of teachers and staff, how we're going to ensure that people are tested, that our students are tested, that people who come in contact with students are wearing masks and exhibiting all the necessary strategies to make sure that this virus does not spread. How, if we have to shut down schools, is the district ready and prepared to go 100% virtual, which we've done in March, but it will be vastly different come September, because now those grades are going to count and those assignments are going to count and teachers are going to be grading. So we want to make sure that we can at least beef that up. But that's how we do it. I mean, we've got to hear from you. We've got to hear from the general public. Our school board has to hear from the general public in terms of what their concerns are with students going back face to face.
I know I said I only had one question, but you brought it up, the school board and people getting involved and engaged. Is the school board still having their meetings virtually, or are they in person?
So the meetings are virtual. They're not in person, which is a very interesting point that you make. If it's not safe for the school board to meet in person, then it is safe for students to be in school every day. But you know, that's something that folks need to ask and inquire about of the school board. So they meet monthly. They also have community meetings. All the information on meetings and how you join is on the district's website. Detroit Public Schools Community District is the site. You can go on there. You can get all the information on how to engage in the meetings.
Well, we thank you, President Martin, for joining us today. A very topic that is hot right now, and I don't think it's going anywhere, and it shouldn't go anywhere, because we're talking about the safety of our kids, the families, as well as the teachers in our Detroit Public Schools Community District. Thanks again for joining us, and you stay safe and stay well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.